Hi everyone, welcome back to the Watch Insider. I am joined tonight by Tim Masso. And it has been a very long time since we've done this show, Tim.
It has been, but we are back with reinforcements and heavy artillery. We've got premier brands, exotic watches, one very cool indie, and possibly the coolest 15202 you will see tonight.
The only 15202 that they will see tonight.
Correction.
So we're back from Dubai Watch Week. There's lots of great content that's going to be coming onto the show over the next several weeks, and we're really excited for all of you to see it.
Okay, let's get started with a few live questions. Let me see. I go into my live streaming. I have not done a live show with Brian in a freaking month. Can you believe it's been a full month?
Crazy.
But the fun of this show is the interactive element. We've got William Rizzo from the Florida Keys, Watch Issues. We've got Limpin, Howdy Limpin, Russell 996 joining in from the UK. I can see Prince Wynn, Eddie Kim, Anthony Napoli, and Steve Bow joining in. All right, guys, we are fielding your questions on all things watches, possibly cars, and definitely starting off with, let's start with our biggest gun.
Okay. So here we have a very special watch, and this is a watch that there's a lot of emotion. That I have a lot of emotion for this watch. So this is a De Bethune Stradivarius. It's a watch that De Bethune launched several years back. That was going to, I would say, almost be their entry-level foray into the brand.
I would say it's definitely an interesting way to get in if you haven't bought into the full floating lug DB28 open dial aesthetic. Now the watch is 42 millimeters, and I believe this one in titanium, so very wearable. It features a conventional lug profile, as you can see. If you've seen the floating lugs, the DB27 and the 28, this is not that. It also features a solid dial that employs De Bethune's most well-known innovation, which is a process for bluing black polished titanium. So almost everything you're seeing on this dial is fire blued titanium, a process they patented back in 2002. Now there are small orbs of titanium outboard that have been displaced from the center to be used as hour indices, and then there's a combination of gold leaf and white gold cabochon that have been applied across the center of the dial to create the band of the Milky Way. In other words, it is the bee's knees. Now turn it all over, and well, here's the bee's hive. This thing is a monster. Horologically, there are very few brands that spend more in relation to their income and size on research and development than De Bethune. Watchmaking genius Denis Flageolet, who I have to say is probably the underrated, brilliant auteur of our era in the watch space, created a 6-day manual wind power reserve with twin self-adjusting barrels, and everything you see here is black polished steel. I'm going to try to remove the fingerprints because this watch really deserves it, but the level of execution here is both high horology engineering and high horology finish. The edges of the bridges, all mirrored anglage, fully rounded specular finish that is mirrored balance bridge, and take a look, it's their own balance. That design right there is the 2016 patent. They have over half a dozen distinct ballast designs. I talked about the R&D. They have their own balance, triple parachute shock protection with a spring here, and a spring here. It's a very resilient watch.
And a few differentiating factors about this watch. So this is not just your standard Stradivarius. This is actually a limited edition that we designed with the brand. It's a 5-piece edition. And, the big changes that we made to the watch are, the first, what you're looking at right now is the black mirror finish of the movement. The standard version of this watch comes with Geneva stripes. But we were so enamored by the black mirror finishing that they do at De Bethune that we wanted it on this watch as well. And this is also the same treatment that they do on some of their higher-end complications. So we opted for this finishing on the movement. And on the front, the key differentiator is actually that chapter ring. So on your standard Stradivarius watch, it's a white chapter ring. It's a little bit wider. It features Roman numerals. And we opted to do a slightly thinner chapter ring that's the same color of the dial with just simple gold dots that really, I think, highlights the key feature of the dial, which is the night sky that you're seeing there.
I'll also throw out another important distinction between the DB25s and the 28s, a conventional crown that's easy to reach. The bullhead style winding of the 28 can be a little bit troublesome. By the way, how about the discretion? This is the antithesis of Rolex with minimal branding. They're almost too discreet about the company name. Finally, one thing I want to shout out, there is a silicon escape wheel of their own design and a hairspring that has a crazy dog leg style kink, because it is actually an off-centered hairspring designed to create overcoil concentric beating, but without the impact vulnerabilities of an overcoil. Let's throw this one on the wrist. I'm going to pull off my Zin Easy M11 that you know well. This is 42 and titanium, which means it's exceptionally wearable. It's all high polish, so inside and out, this one glistens like the night sky. It's a very wearable watch, and the fit is not only ergonomically agreeable, but very conventional. If you just think that the standard DB28 is too much of a circus on the wrist, well, this is the antidote. This is more like the opera.
Yeah, no, and again, this is definitely not a watch for everyone, but I very much view it that it's art on the wrist, and I think that when you have, when you learn more about the brand, you learn more about the watchmaker, what goes into making each watch, how many watches they're making per year. Again, for me, it's just there's a soul to it, and I think that when you look at the watch, you can really almost see the passion that went into making it.
I'll also say this, when Brian mentions the number of watches they're making, all watches combine about 150 pieces a year. There have been some years when FP Journe has made almost that many Chronomètre Bleu. So that's a rare watch from a brand that builds few watches. This is next level rarity and exclusivity.
Yeah. So, and guys, as Tim mentioned, this is a live show for a reason. So please, if you have any questions about any watches on the table, we are here to answer.
Now, we have a comment from Obaz. Much love from Australia, everybody. Yep, if you're joining us from Australia, thank you for getting up super early in the morning. I appreciate you chiming in. Guys, live chat, interactive show, ask questions. We're good to go. I mentioned watches and cars. We're answering questions about anything that comes to mind. As you can see from our shelves, which include everything from books to objet d'art to vintage Polaroid, this is basically a lifestyle show. Okay, I could see Naresh Pape joining in from, I believe, Toronto. Brick Lane, Eddie Kim, saying, don't show that yellow Daytona again.
Have you already shown it?
The yellow Daytona might have been on my show last night.
God damn it. I feel like we always, we need to, maybe I have to get a listen, or I just have to watch the show the night before.
Watch the show, help my views. Okay, right. Eddie Nielsen saying the De Bethune DB25 with a Starfleet look, no need to tone it down, especially the bridge on the other side, which looks very much like a Starfleet badge. I can imagine that on Captain Picard. Or Kirk, depending on your preference.
Okay.
All right.
So why don't we start here, sport watch that I think I've brought on similar pieces on the show before. So here we have the Breguet Marine 40, a fantastic watch, and I honestly think it shouldn't be, but a sleeper at this point. It often goes overlooked relative to other sports models that are out there, but I think you've got a guilloche center dial, you've got an engine turn case, you've got a really flexible and soft rubber strap. You turn the watch over, you've got a gold rotor. It's absolutely gorgeous, and I think that this is a watch that at this stage, if you're looking for an everyday steel sport watch, all eyes should be turned to this piece still.
And it really does make sense to think about this piece as a bit of a sleeper. As Brian mentioned, you're talking about a great company that'll be around to service it forever. There are benefits from buying from a large brand. Now, in terms of what makes this watch special, let's start from the inside and work our way out. As Brian mentioned, the dial is guilloche cut, but the dial itself is not just true rose lathe guilloche, as Breguet is heavily invested in rose lathes, but it is on a solid gold base. So you're getting a rose lathe hand guilloche solid gold dial that is then silvered to give this lovely aesthetic. The dial features applique fire blued Roman numerals, which have a lovely contrast against the silver base, and you'll note there's a contrast between the satin finish of the tracks and the guilloche billowing rose lathe spiral of the center. Now, it is a loomed watch, so you can use this as your only watch if you must have sports watch functionality. No one liked the 2018 Marine, and while that's a shame because it's a well-made watch, it's also a bizarre-looking thing that's hard to love. This is a lot warmer, this is a lot more charismatic, and in steel, it's sports watch rugged. As Brian mentioned, the strap is remarkably soft, although it features an integrated profile that closes the gap to the case and prevents any daylight from showing. That's a good look. It doesn't fight you and flare. As you can see, you can pull the strap down fairly close to the lugs themselves, which are secured with screws and bars, not spring bars for security. Now, you turn it over, and the movement is a bit of an underrated gem. One of the unsung heroes of our era of high horology has been the Patek Philippe 1150 and all of its derivatives, beautifully finished in high horology fashion in the Vallée du Jeu. It's a twin barrel movement that produces, depending on the spec, between 65 hours and 100 hours of power reserve. This one runs for 65 hours, and with the twin barrels, it has very little drop-off of amplitude after 24 or 48 hours. Breguet comes back and executes rose lathe work on this Nautilus-like shell, oops, did I say Nautilus? On the rotor itself, which is lovely and rose lathe cut to match the dial. It's not just that they're both guilloche, they are matching guilloche, so there's a wonderful parallelism. And finally, you have a lovely coined case flank with a sharp break between case flank and the lugs themselves, giving it a look that's very different from sports watches hailing from mainstream brands. And at over 100 meters water resistant, it is a full-service sports watch. Let's throw it on the wrist. And you can see, it's an easy watch to wear. There are certainly bigger and more imposing sports watches, but I can't think of too many that have a better balance of rarity, horological value, and refinement, as well as big brand support.
You know, and one of the interesting things about the watch is that it's considered a 40 millimeter size, but it fits larger because of the construction of the lugs, and then I actually think it fits more like a 42. You know, which is nice.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Which is nice if you're looking for a sport watch that's a little bit bigger. Where you're sort of, you find 40 to be a little bit small, and you want something that's just that little bit bigger. This, I think, really fills that void.
We'll show those lugs one more time. It's a combination of two things. The sheer strength of the lugs, which you can see is pronounced and forceful. And then there's the integration of the strap, which creates the impression of a larger watch across the wrist. It's a very handsome blend of steel and rubber, and I happen to find this two-tone steel and blue to probably be the best version of the watch, the best version of the steel case and a rubber Breguet strap. Also, look at the attention to detail. They put in little evacuated pockets on the bottom to allow the wrist to better vent on a hot day, and you're getting a full deployant clasp here. Even the strap minders, which are usually a throwaway item, here you can see they're in that wave to match the motif of the dial and the rotor, as well as the crown guard, and as you can see, the strap minders are in steel, not disposable components. I wanted to answer a question in the chat box. Good railroading fan watch. Okay. A question, if you wanted a railroading watch. If you want a real railroading watch, what you probably want to do is go out and find yourself something like a Hamilton 992B, a wonderful railroad-style chronometer, or maybe something along the lines of an Illinois, I would say probably a Bund Special. And then you'd probably want to take a look at something along the lines of a railroad spec Accutron from the 1960s. There were a few railroad spec Accutrons, which were among the few Accutrons from Bulova that had a hacking function. That'd be a cool vintage railroading wristwatch. And of course, in the modern day, I would say definitely consider a ball. It's just discontinued, I believe, but the Engineer 2 Magneto S. That's a really cool watch. Understated, you can pick it up for like $2,000, and it's probably the coolest 42 millimeter time-only steel watch you will ever find.
And Ball got its founding as almost being a railroad watch.
That's true. If you can find, I believe Ball historically in the pocket watch era was actually just a man who assigned standards for actual railroad chronometers. Mm-hmm. Later on, it did become a brand that was an American watchmaker, and today it is an American watch brand in spirit, but built out of La Chaux de Fonds.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Should we move right along?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
But I would recommend
we'll save the white gold Daytona that he doesn't want us to talk about for the end.
Get a 60-hour Bund Special, 21 joule or 23 joule if you want a really special railroad chronometer. Okay, we're holding off on the Rolex.
Let's talk about the UN.
Definitely.
Okay, so this is a very special watch. Here we have a San Marco 37. So it's a 37 millimeter Ulysse Nardin in yellow gold with a beautiful cloisonné dial. And I try and bring esoteric watches on the show just for our viewers to see things that maybe that they're not really used to, or things that they're not drawn to necessarily on our website. And I'm very much a fan of the rare handcrafts pieces. I think that it's a very cool, almost dying art, and I love that the manufacturers support these artisans in keeping the craft alive. But more importantly, just how well executed this watch is, and the value that is associated with being able to get a watch like this at what I think is a very good price for what you're getting, because it really is a true piece of art on the wrist.
You can see the line of San Marco on the back, the icon of the San Marco line. Back during the 90s, this was the height of artistry at Ulysse Nardin. Now, what you're looking at is cloisonné enamel, and I mentioned to Brian before the show, there are many different grades of enamel. There's a reason that a Seiko Presage can be sold for $1,500 with an enamel dial, and the reason is that not all enamel is created equally. This is a combination of things. It's Grand Faux, which means it's been fired up to 20 times at 800 degrees Celsius. Every firing can result in a fracture, a crack that scraps the dial. It's created on a solid gold base, and the next element here is cloisonné, which is creating the cloison, or the cordon, the shape using gold wire. You can see the images of Sir Francis Drake's flagship, the Golden Hind, as it's plundering the Spanish Main in the 16th century. A 25-piece limited edition, you can see individual numbering on the dial exquisitely in the same gold wire that's used to create the cloison effect. Now here's the thing. You have those golden cloisons, and they bound vitreous enamel or glass paint that is applied in various different stroke weights to create not just the different colors but also different shades. So you can see the shading of the sky. That's not necessarily just the effect of different colors, but of different stroke weights of enamel applied in different thicknesses to create the shades, as well as the intensity of the color. You can see the verdure of the landscape in the background, and there are different levels of green and intensities of green, and that's all done using the eye and the hand of the master, who knows how much is enough. Now, it's a basic ETA 2892A2 base, which means it's very tough and it's very accurate. It's also very thin. So this is a wonderfully traditional 37mm dress watch whose dial is all the reason you need to buy it, and so good was the longtime enamel partner of Ulysse Nardin, Donze Cadran, that UN bought the company and took the enamel in-house back in 2012. Throw it on the wrist, and it's a very traditionally sized men's dress watch. Lovely fluted style to the lugs in the case, as well as the bezel. It's a timepiece with a lot of personality that any wrist can wear, and I think that's important in this age when oftentimes the size of the watch is proportional to the statement the watch is trying to make. Here, it makes a huge statement in a wearable size.
I need this watch on a green suede strap is what I decided.
We can do that.
We can do that. But no, I mean, as you said, not all cloisonné is created equal, and I do think that there's something to be said for the artistry of the watch, and how if you remove the brand name from it, depending upon what brand is on that dial, it changes the value by, it can be as much as hundreds of thousands. And it's a special watch, and obviously, again, similar to the De Bethune, it's not for everybody. But, I think it makes a statement.
I think it's for more people than the De Bethune.
You think so?
I think so.
Interesting.
I think yellow gold is most appropriate in a vintage watch or discreetly sized watch. Mm-hmm. And having been built in the 90s, I consider this to be both vintage and discreetly sized. Mm-hmm. I also think it's a wonderful nod to an era when enameling was not as respected and well known as it is in the horological community. Today, almost everyone knows cloisonné, champlevé, flinqué, grand faux, all of these terms associated with enamel.
Everybody knows all those terms.
Well, I mean, the people watching this show do. So the bottom line is that there was a time when you had to know that this process existed to even ask Ulysse Nardin to produce the piece. It wasn't the kind of thing you were going to encounter in daily life or even in a dealer's case. That was one of those order-only pieces from an era when that kind of art really was on the endangered species list.
Yeah. So taking a completely different turn.
Yes.
Let's talk about the AP that's on the table here. So here we have a 15202, also known as the AP Jumbo, in yellow gold with a white dial. So, obviously, maybe we can call it the younger brother, but the steel younger sibling of this watch is one of the most popular desired watches that Audemars Piguet is currently making. And, the gold watch has always done remarkably well. In addition, it's now only made in rose gold. They've since discontinued the yellow gold variant. Well, actually, they may still make the yellow as a boutique variation. I know that they were doing it with a gold dial, and then they were doing it with a blue dial as well. I'm not sure if it's still in production and available, but this is an older iteration of the watch. You know this right away because the AP is at the 12 o'clock mark, which was changed in 2012. So you know that this watch was from 2012 or prior, and it really has an old world feel to it and a lot of similarities to the original Jumbo that came out in the 70s.
It's an interesting watch because a lot of folks don't realize that the original Royal Oak was gold. And I don't mean the original 5402, I mean the actual Basel show watch. It was made of white gold because at the time the prototype was constructed, Audemars Piguet was not able to fabricate a watch that exacting in specification and construction tolerance in stainless steel. It wore out their tools. They had to actually prepare and get a running start at that production. So the initial prototypes, which were produced quickly, were made of white gold because Audemars Piguet was able to work gold more easily than steel when the tolerances and the forms were this specialized. Now, this watch is exceptionally early in the 15202 line, which came out in the year 2000. This is an E-series watch, and you can see the case back of the watch. It's not just that it's an E-series watch, but it has a low individual unit number, 125. And if you appreciate the fact that there have been some changes to the 15202, not all for the better, you'll also appreciate the fact that the original rotor, which was freehand skeletonized and then hand finished with mirrored chamfers with the AP logo, that's the one you want, not the milled out industrial piece on the current 15202. Mechanically, it's the AP 2121 based on the JLC 920, a very important and ultra-thin, historically relevant piece designed in 1967 for Patek, Audemars, and Vacheron, never used by JLC and only ever used by those big three brands. Today, AP makes it in-house and has for quite some time. So it is technically an in-house caliber. A few other differences that you'll see on this dial compared to current production: the Arabic numerals outside of shortened indices, and if you look very carefully, in addition to that AP at 12 rather than 6, as Brian mentioned, you could see that the date disc, even on the silver dial, isn't quite the same color as the dial. The dial is silver, the disc is white, and it only becomes more apparent as the dials get darker, but you can see it even on the silver. Finally, you can see there is an older clasp. It is a single action fold with a single trigger release mechanism. So this is a watch that is a little bit different from current production in every regard. Being yellow gold in a 15202, it's already rare. Being early production in exceptional shape right back from factory service makes it even better.
Yeah, no, an absolutely amazing watch. And these particular pieces, like, you can really feel the inspiration from the original versions of the watch as it's been updated over the years. And, I think more than anything else, it's that sort of white dial that almost gives it a vintage vibe.
This is a summary watch.
Yeah.
This is a summary 15202 right there.
Yeah, and to me, the 39 millimeter is just an absolutely perfect size because the Royal Oak case tends to fit a little bit bigger, but the watch is magnificent. So.
Yeah, we had some questions about, pardon me guys, I'm a little bit under the weather. I took quite a few Sudafed before this show. For you, I will do anything for you guys. There were questions about the 10 Hertz Breguet. Of course, the Breguets that were being referenced are the 7727 Classique Chronometrie, which won the GPHG Aiguille d'Or back in 2014, and the 3880, also known as the Type 22. That's a meaty watch, but probably one of the coolest chronos if your wrist can ship it. Now, the thing about the 10 Hertz Breguets is that I almost feel like they're an evolutionary dead end, because it seems that today people who actually want the utmost in oscillation frequency and precision with a mechanical watch are going to go with something like a harmonic resonator, a one-piece escapement, balance wheel, and impulsing surface like what you'll find on the Dayfi Inventor from Zenith. De Bethune has its own version of that technology that it's bringing to market called Resonique. Also, Dominique Renault has his own system that he's working on, and Valche Manufacture with its Senfine technology is working on the same thing. So all of those oscillate at an incredible rate. The Dayfi is over 129,000 oscillations per hour. So the 72,000 oscillation per hour Breguet has one advantage over all those, and only one advantage, which is that it can be hand finished. While the silicone hairspring cannot, almost everything else on the Breguet movement can be hand finished because it still includes a lot of traditional watchmaking. Whereas the other ultra-high frequency harmonic resonators that have a natural frequency, they have no hairspring, they have no balance. It's just one mono block of silicon. Those can't be hand finished. So I like the 10 Hertz Breguets. If you want to get the 7727 in white gold, I think that's the best buy because you're getting a GPHG Aiguille d'Or winner for, like, I want to say $25,000 now. And you're getting it with the full fat technology, as it has both the high oscillation rate with the silicon hairspring and escapement, and it has the magnetic balance pivots that you don't get on the Type 22 pilot's watch. The magnetic balance pivots feature, it's almost like a desk novelty, where only one side of the balance staff is in contact with a magnetic surface, and there's a stronger magnet underneath, and it's actually not in contact with that bottom magnet. It floats between the two, in touch with only the one, to minimize friction, and then also add another measure of shock protection. And the result is a watch that's able to run no worse than -1 + 3 seconds per day. It's very impressive, and it does still have a lot of traditional watchmaking in it. I just think, as beautiful as it is intellectually and artistically, it's going to be rendered extinct by one-piece silicon oscillators.
I mean, seriously, how amazing is this guy? I mean, that was awesome.
Well, you do pay me for a reason. Remember me when the holidays come around.
We will. So from K. Kyle at Brian Goldberg, that Patek 5170J is amazing and around the same price as the 1815 Chrono. Really appreciate the tip. Got to look into this one a lot more. Awesome. So I think you'll really enjoy the watch. He was asking about a watch for a doctor.
Okay.
Yeah. And he was saying, what other comp is there other to an 1815 that has the pulsometer? And I said the original 5170J.
Another watch to check, it's tough to find because they only made a few dozen of them, but the Vacheron Constantin Medicus, and I want to say Longines has done at least one pulsometer in its Heritage series.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely check out the Medicus if you want to see the world's best finished La Manna moonwatch caliber.
Okay, so what else do we have here on the table?
Well, let's go for something a bit more traditional. We're talking about smaller colored gold complications.
So here we have a Patek Philippe 5059 Rose. So what you're looking at here is a Patek Philippe perpetual calendar retrograde, not the current iteration of the watch, which is a 5159, but the 5059. So it's going to be slightly older. The case size is a little bit smaller. It does not feature the guilloche dial. It features a flat white dial here. And you've got an officer-style case back, which Tim is showing off right now, as well as the extended officer-style lugs. And to me, this watch is just absolutely magnificent. I think that it's old world with a modern feel. I love the size. I love the fit on the wrist. I think that this is a watch that you can dress up and dress down. And to me, it's a watch that has a little bit just been, forgotten about with all of the hype that's going on with some other models. But I just think that from a value perspective, these watches can be picked up for what I consider next to nothing. And the, let's call it, level of price appreciation that I think that is left in these down the road is going to be huge.
Yeah, if you want a Patek Philippe that is all that Patek and then some, a perpetual calendar is a signature complication, and an officer's case is another one of those Patek Philippe specialties. It's a bit idiosyncratic because what it's designed to evoke is the image of a pocket watch with soldered-on lugs, soldered-on bars, and the original Hunter caseback remaining, as they were often rigged up for use on officers' wrists during World War I. It was often impractical and even dangerous to try to extract and reference a pocket watch, so at the time, many pocket watches were converted into wristwatches, creating the original clientele once these soldiers returned home for wristwatches. Previously, wristwatches had been almost exclusively ladies' watches, considered to be somewhat dainty and effeminate. They were generally powered by small pendant watch movements and weren't terribly accurate. That began to change as pocket watch started getting converted, and the officer's watch really was the prelude to the modern wristwatch format. Again, this watch is fabricated to a standard unknown back in those days. As you can see, the execution of the soldering, that sharp cleft between case flank and lug, is state-of-the-art. Now, this is as good as hand finishing gets because creating that sharp break requires manually removing all evidence of the welded joint. So if you've seen a welded bicycle frame, you know exactly how bad that can look when it's unfinished. This is how good it can look when it's artisanally refinished. Now, it has that lovely rotund shape of a pocket watch. It has the bars that were often fixed directly and welded on back in the day, but here they are fixed by screw-fixed bars for more security than you'll find with spring bars. And again, because many of those old pocket watches retained their Hunter casebacks, you get a Hunter caseback on the 5059. So if you want to be discreet, you can do so. It has a wonderful integration of the hinge, and you could see that onion-style pocket watch-inspired crown. And then on the inside, of course, you could see it's mirrored featuring the reference number 5059. This is a 36 millimeter watch. The 5159 is a 38. I find that the officer's watch, because of its lugs, tends to wear large.
Similar to the Breguet Marine that we had on earlier.
Exactly. So I actually like the 36 better than the 38. This watch was made from 1993 till 2006, so you do have your choice of a wide range of different variations over the years. I like this one with its flat, one might even say matte white dial. It's not silver, and simple black stylized Roman numerals. It is a bit of a quirky perpetual with the aperture calendar and the retrograde, as most Patek Philippe perpetual calendars feature rotating hands for the day, date, and the month, and most of them would not feature a retrograde. So the combination of the aperture and the retrograde has been a distinctive tradition of the 5059, the 5050, and the 5159, and I really like this size. As you can see, it wears larger. It's got a lot of personality. It's not terribly thin, but it's still easy to cuff. A lovely and nostalgic old-timer from Patek, and a watch I'd take, frankly, over any Nautilus.
Yeah, no, I mean, I just think the watch is so, like old school cool. And it's like, it's one of those watches where, I feel like if you see it on a collector's wrist, I immediately just think, like, what else does this guy have in his collection? Because, if you're rocking this around on a daily basis, it's like, I don't want to call it like ruggedly cool, but it's like almost old world but modern.
Yeah, what it says
It's like nouveau vintage almost.
Exactly. It's a vintage style. And hey, the first ones were made in 1993, so some of them are vintage.
Yeah.
I would also say when you see it on a guy's wrist, whereas most Patek Philippe watches convey a message to the effect of, I can afford $70,000 for a steel sports watch, this says something else. Not I can afford it, but I knew enough to choose it. And that's why Brian said it's often a canary in the coal mine that'll lead to making a best friend, because that guy's into watches, and he's into watches for the sake of the watches, not the image, the flash, the dash, and, the whole element that bespeaks of wealth. This is about love for horology.
Well said.
All right, we got questions right here. Bump. Brick Lane saying, classically Patek Philippe. We've got... Steve Bowden, I love Tim. He wears expensive watches, buys his button-down shirts from Old Navy. That's a fact. Well, then again, I'm the rugged individualist now, wearing the Zin, so maybe I've switched up my formula. What else right here? We got Time saying, welcome back, Tim. Thanks so much, guys. I missed you while I was away. We got Super Steel. We got B&S saying that 5059 looks good on me. Yeah, but I'm not totally down with the rose gold, although if I were to do colored gold, it would be on something like this that's a little bit anachronistic and discreetly sized. It would be like a 36.
Question from Mark S. What does Tim drive? Tim, what do you drive?
Well, right now I have what I call my enabler car, which is the setup for the stupid car. I have a paid-off Chevy Volt that I bought with cash, and it is the free car. It costs nothing to operate and maintain. It is also thoroughly sanitized and sterile. So I will admit I'm considering stupid cars right now, some of which I actually have open in Auto Trader windows even as we're talking. So I am actively involved in blowing my next wad of cash on a stupid car. Thank you for asking. There will be an update when I park something less anodyne in the garage. But please, stay in touch. Also, guys, let me know, what is your dream watch and your dream car combination? Note that your dream car watch combination might not individually involve your dream watch or your dream car. I'm talking about a watch that suits the wheels.
Oh, so like a combination of
Yes.
watch and cars.
Things that fit together logically.
Okay.
I would say, for me, it would be something like a great sort of spiritual union would be like a Pano's Esperante or Avanazzo, which is like this weird hand-built low-volume car out of Georgia that's, based on a racing heritage, and something like a Devon Tread 2, which is a weird motorsports-inspired low-volume American-made watch. The weirdness of the two, the low volume and the boutique aspect, unifies them.
I was going to say like an old 911 and a 3940.
I could see that. I could see that. I would also say, if we're going to go vintage, a 1966 Oldsmobile Toronado and a 1966 Bulova Accutron Space View. They were both revolutionary in their day. Okay.
Okay.
We got Henry Jekyll asking, what's on the stupid car list, Tim? Various 6.75 liter Bentleys, the Aston Martin Vanquish S from 2005 or 2006, anything built by Panos with a manual transmission, and if I could ever find one, a Consulier GTP. Why? Because John Fitch swore by it, and John Fitch was a badass.
Okay. I don't know who Don Fitch is.
He was an American racing hero of the 1950s.
Oh, well. Okay.
Right.
Final watch on the table, a watch that you apparently had on your show. But again, a watch that I thought was absolutely awesome, so I had to bring it on mine. So here we have a old school white gold Daytona on a yellow strap with what appears a yellow toned mother of pearl dial and yellow subdial. So this is a watch that Rolex was making in conjunction with other watches of similar dial types, meaning they did a pink strap version with a almost pink tone mother of pearl, so on and so forth. And it's to me, it's a little bit similar to the Stella dials. It's Rolex adding a flare of color and fun to a almost more traditional watch line of theirs. And these are watches that I would say until recently probably have gone for the most part unknown, but these esoteric models within the Rolex line are becoming a lot more, I would say, relevant today as collectors or consumers are looking to find cool, interesting things from top tier brands that they can differentiate themselves with.
By the way, guys, how do you like the idea of a 6-speed 4.2-liter Audi R8 from '09 with a Zeitwerk? Okay, speaking of which, this is a watch named after a racetrack, so it's apropos, it fits the conversation. Would you believe this was one of the original in-house caliber Daytonas launched in 2000? Talk about making a crazy first impression. It's also one of the few Rolex watches you'll find fit with a factory lizard strap. Now, there were 4 versions of this watch, 3 with mother of pearl dials, yellow, blue, and pink. The green one was chrysoprase. They're known informally as the Daytona Beach series because, for obvious reasons, they're more about miles of style outside the superspeedway during spring break than they are about grinding it out over 24 hours in January at Daytona. It's a white gold watch. It's technically the 116519, and although Brian says they've flown a bit below the radar, they are beginning to pick up. The chrysoprase green one in particular. All of these are now valuable and sought-out watches. I think the thing about them is that they are niche Daytonas. I'm not sure this is anyone's first Rolex, but if you are a collector of the brand and you want something that swaps the rather stolid, almost Teutonic character of standard Rolex for something a bit more raffish, flamboyant, and exuberant, this is the way to go, and they are rare watches.
You know what? And I do think that this is the kind of watch that's, I would say, a little utilitarian in the sense of a man or woman could wear this watch. You know, men are wearing ladies' watches, and, you know, let's face it, there's cool ladies' watches out there that I think men would wear. So, you know, this is a watch that really suits a lot of different people's tastes. And is exactly as you said, I think it notches that notch of it's a collectible watch, it's cool, there's a history to it. And you know what? If you're not a huge fan of the, you know, let's call it the strap, even though I think it's wickedly awesome, you can put it on a more standard colored strap and, you know, wear the watch with that yellow tone mother of pearl dial.
Yeah, a black strap with a yellow stitch would look absolutely badass on this watch. Let me read out your responses to my query right here. It says, first, Tim needs a watch, then a car. We've got Steve Bo saying, Tim, please buy a Camaro. Why not the 5th generation Camaro Z28? That's an absolute badass track car for the street. It's like the redneck 911 GT3 RS. Right here we have does Tim have a girlfriend? I'm married to my machine so far. Damien H. saying Mercedes Gullwing with Patek Philippe 1518. That is a power pairing. Alexander T. saying Nissan GTR and Grand Seiko 50th anniversary. The SBGC 229. The Nissan GTR limited edition. Right here, Seamaster and an Aston Martin. I've got the Seamaster. I need the Aston Martin. And then right here, we've got NS something saying Dream Watch plus car Lotus 7 with a Vacheron Constantin Corne de Vache steel chronograph, not the reissue, the original from the 50s, like the Lotus 7. We got Tony Sanchez with the 911 GT2 993, ooh, shooting high, the first of the GT2s, and a DB28. And then Pilot Style 123 saying, Tim, the old lord the old style, I think I missed your comment because the chat box jumped, but I love the fact that you guys are throwing out these combos. Right here we've got a Lancer Evolution 5 paired with a High Beat Grand Seiko from Todi. And then we've got Locutus de Borg saying that he loves the Daytona. He calls this one Old Yella. I agree. I would endorse that right there. And then we've got Fiat paired with Bulgari Chrono. I would say if you wanted to pair a Bulgari with a Fiat, the Fiat Dino with the Ferrari engine from the 70s, that would be the one to pair.
I hope our viewers realize that you know more about cars than watches.
Don't tell them. don't let them know. This is my hobby. My day job is spent on Auto Trader. Watch out, Doug DeMuro. I'm coming for you.
We got to get you on a car podcast or something like that.
We definitely should. This seems to have hit,
or get a car person on the show.
This hit the nail on the head or struck a chord. We're going to revisit this topic in the future. Brian, you got a family to head home. I got nothing but Auto Trader.
Guys, this is the Watch Insider. We hope you enjoyed the show. As always, if you have any questions or there's anything that you want to see on the show, please don't hesitate to email Tim or myself. The show is for you guys, and the content we create is for you. And anything we can do to make that better, we're all ears. So again, my name's Brian. This is Tim. This is the Watch Insider, and thank you all for logging on.